The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of Lumiere as Karim Al-Fayez adjusted his platinum cufflinks for the third time in 5 minutes. At 34, the tech mogul had built an empire that spanned 3 continents. Tonight's merger with the European Banking Consortium would cement his position as the youngest Arab billionaire to crack the Fortune 500's top 10. "Mr. Al-Fayez, your table is ready," the maitre d' announced with practiced reverence, gesturing toward the restaurant's most exclusive corner booth. Kareem's obsidian eyes swept across the dining room, mentally calculating the net worth of every patron. Old habits from his days clawing out of poverty in Dubai's forgotten neighborhoods. The scent of truffle oil and aged wine filled his nostrils as he followed the maitre d', his Tom Ford bespoke suit and handmade Italian leather shoes, a stark contrast to the cardboard box he once called a bed. His Hermes tie, adjusted to perfection, complemented the Patek Philippe Nautilus, adorning his wrist, a timepiece worth more than what most people earned in 5 years. He settled into the plush velvet booth, placing his sleek titanium briefcase beside him. Inside lay the merger documents, 200 pages of legal jargon that would transfer controlling interests in 7 European financial institutions into his hands. His fingers traced the embossed letterhead as memories flashed through his mind. Every acquisition was proof that the hungry child from Al-Quoz had conquered the world that once rejected him. "The board is expecting perfection on this deal," he muttered to himself. "First major American acquisition. No room for error." Kareem glanced at his watch. The European Banking Consortium representatives would arrive in 20 minutes. He opened the briefcase, extracting the hefty contract for one final review. The $100 million deal represented more than just business. It was personal validation. A statement that a man from nothing could rise to command everything. "Would you care for wine while you wait, sir?" The voice stopped him cold. Not the gravelly tone of their usual sommelier, but something melodic, almost musical. Kareem glanced up, expecting to see another polished server in the restaurant's signature black uniform. Instead, he found himself staring into the most unusual pair of eyes he had ever encountered. Amber with flecks of gold, not quite brown, not quite hazel, but something mesmerizing that seemed to shift in the candlelight. The young woman couldn't be more than 28, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, and olive skin that suggested Middle Eastern heritage, though something indefinable marked her as different. "You're new," he stated, rather than asked, his tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to immediate answers. "Yes, sir." "This is my second week," she replied. Her voice held a slight tremor, but she maintained eye contact with surprising dignity. "I apologize if I'm disturbing your preparation. I can send Andre if you prefer." Kareem studied her more carefully. Most servers in establishments like this possessed either the practiced obsequiousness of career hospitality workers or the desperate eagerness of those grateful for any employment. This woman displayed neither. Instead, her posture suggested someone trying very hard to appear smaller than she naturally was. "What's your name?" he asked, leaning back with the casual dominance that had intimidated board members across 5 countries. "Maya Nazari, sir, Palestinian-American." The slight lift of her chin carried just enough defiance to intrigue him. "Interesting. And what does a Palestinian-American waitress know about wine selection for a man about to acquire half of Europe's banking sector?" The question was designed to embarrass, to establish the natural hierarchy between them. Kareem had learned early that keeping people off balance prevented them from becoming too comfortable, too presumptuous. But instead of stammering or apologizing, Maya tilted her head slightly, considering his words. "I would suggest the 2015 Domaine de la Romane Conti," she said quietly. "It's bold enough to match your ambition, but refined enough to complement the gravity of your achievement." Kareem's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. The wine she'd suggested was not only the most expensive bottle on Lumiere's legendary list, but also happened to be his personal favorite, a detail not listed anywhere on the menu. "How did you know that vintage?" "I didn't, I guessed." Her honesty was either refreshing or foolish. In his world, the two were often synonymous. But if you're conducting business that will affect European banking, you'll want something that speaks to both power and sophistication. That particular Romane Conti has a reputation for both. Before Kareem could respond, his associates arrived in a flurry of expensive cologne and nervous energy. Heinrich Weber, senior partner at the European Banking Consortium, led the group with the purposeful stride of a man carrying documents worth more than most countries' GDP. The German banker's silver hair gleamed under the chandelier light, his custom Brioni suit a statement of old-world wealth. "Karim, my friend." Heinrich's accent carried across the dining room as he embraced Karim with European formality. "Ready to make history always." Beside Weber stood Richard Blackwell, the consortium's lead counsel from the prestigious firm Blackwell and Stern. His pinstriped suit and wire-rimmed glasses projected calculated competence, though Karim noted the coldness behind his smile. Karim's attention shifted to business mode, but something made him glance back at Maya. She had retreated to a respectful distance, but those unusual eyes remained fixed on the documents Heinrich was removing from his briefcase. Her expression had changed. The nervous deference was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like alarm. "Gentlemen, shall we begin?" Karim gestured to the seats around the table as Maya approached with their wine selection. As she poured the Romanée Conti, her hands were steady despite their slight tremor earlier. When she reached Heinrich's glass, Karim noticed her pause, almost imperceptibly, her eyes scanning the open contract on the table. "Will there be anything else?" she asked, but her voice carried a different quality now. Less timid, more concerned. "Privacy," Heinrich answered curtly. "This conversation is not for civilian ears." Maya nodded and began to withdraw, but something made Karim call out to her. "Actually, wait." He couldn't explain the impulse, but something in her expression intrigued him. "You mentioned you could guess things about wine. What else can you guess about?" Heinrich shot him a look of confusion, but Karim ignored it. There was something about this woman that didn't fit the simple narrative of a struggling waitress grateful for employment. "I'm not sure I understand, sir." "Documents. Can you read documents as well as you read wine preferences?" The question hung in the air like smoke from expensive cigars. Heinrich shifted uncomfortably, clearly annoyed by the interruption, but Karim found himself genuinely curious about her answer. "I can read, yes, sir." "In how many languages?" The question surprised even him, but those eyes, there was intelligence there that seemed at odds with her circumstances. "5, sir." The table fell silent. Heinrich's associates exchanged glances while Karim leaned forward, genuinely intrigued for the first time in months. 5 languages. A Palestinian-American waitress who knows vintage wine and speaks 5 languages. He reached for the contract, his movements deliberate and theatrical. "How interesting." Before Heinrich could object, Karim held up one section of the document. The text was dense legal language, a mixture of English and German, with technical terminology that would confuse most attorneys. "Read this section out loud." "Karim, this is highly irregular." Heinrich protested, his face flushing red. "We're discussing confidential." "She signed a standard employee confidentiality agreement, I'm sure." Karim's tone brooked no argument. "Didn't you, Maya?" "Yes, sir." "Then read." Maya took the document with hands that no longer trembled. As her eyes scanned the page, something remarkable happened. Her entire demeanor transformed. The nervous waitress disappeared, replaced by someone who moved with quiet confidence and intellectual precision. This section outlines the transfer protocols for the Basel III compliance requirements. She began, her voice now clear and authoritative. "However, there's an inconsistency in paragraph 7. The regulatory framework referenced here was superseded by the European Banking Authority's revised guidelines in March 2024. Any contracts relying on the older framework would be legally void within 6 months of signing." The wine glasses might as well have shattered from the silence that followed. Heinrich's face had gone from red to pale, while his associates frantically rifled through their briefcases. Karim felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Maya continued, her voice gaining strength, "that whoever drafted this contract is either incompetent or deliberately trying to create a legal loophole that would invalidate your acquisition after you've already transferred the funds." Heinrich shot to his feet. "This is preposterous." A waitress questioning documents prepared by... "She's right." The voice came from Sarah Klein, Heinrich's junior associate, who had been frantically typing on her phone. "The EBA guidelines she mentioned, and they're real. Updated 6 months ago." She looked up, her expression a mixture of shock and embarrassment. How did we miss this? The restaurant seemed to spin around Kareem as the implications crashed over him. $100 million. That's what he would have lost if he'd signed the contract without this discovery. $100 million saved by a waitress who supposedly just knew how to carry plates. Everyone out. Kareem's voice was quiet but carried the finality of a judge's gavel. Weber, we're done for tonight. Obviously, you need to review your documentation more carefully. As the banking associates gathered their papers with embarrassed haste, Kareem never took his eyes off Maya. She stood perfectly still, as if waiting for judgment, but something in her posture suggested she was prepared to run. When the table finally cleared, leaving only the two of them in the corner booth, Kareem leaned back and studied the young woman who had just saved him a fortune. Sit down. Sir, I should return to my other tables. Sit down. This time it wasn't a request. Maya slid into the seat across from him with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to high-stakes conversations, despite her humble uniform. The candlelight flickered between them like a living thing, casting dancing shadows across her face as she met Kareem's penetrating stare. Now, Kareem said, his voice dangerously quiet, tell me who you really are. Around them, the restaurant hummed with the quiet conversations of Manhattan's elite, but their corner booth felt isolated from the world. I told you I'm a waitress. Her voice was steady, but Kareem caught the slight tension in her shoulders. Waitresses don't typically know obscure European banking regulations well enough to spot fraudulent contract clauses. He leaned forward, his business instincts fully engaged. They also don't usually speak 5 languages or recommend $20,000 wine bottles with the confidence of a sommelier. Maya's fingers drummed once against the table before she caught herself. Such a small gesture, but it told Kareem everything he needed to know. She was calculating, measuring her words with the precision of someone who had learned that honesty could be dangerous. People contain multitudes, Mr. Al-Fayez. Surely a man who built a tech empire from nothing understands that appearances can be deceiving. The response was elegant, deflective, and told him absolutely nothing. It also revealed she knew exactly who he was despite never being introduced. Clever, but you're avoiding my question. Kareem signaled to Andre, who appeared instantly with the discretion that came with 15 years of serving Manhattan's power brokers. Bring us coffee, the good coffee, and ensure we're not disturbed. As Andre retreated, Kareem studied Maya's reaction. Most people became nervous when trapped in conversation with him. His reputation for ruthlessness was well-earned and carefully cultivated. But this woman seemed more resigned than afraid, as if she'd been expecting this moment. You saved me $100 million tonight, he said quietly. That kind of favor typically comes with expectations attached. What are yours? I don't have any expectations, sir. Everyone has expectations. The question is whether they're honest about them. The coffee arrived with swift silence, giving Kareem time to analyze the way she held her cup. Confident grip, perfect posture movements that spoke of training and etiquette most waitresses never received. For instance, I expect you to tell me why someone with your obvious education is serving tables instead of practicing international law. Maya's cup paused halfway to her lips. What makes you think I studied law? Because I studied business law at Harvard, and the way you dissected that contract wasn't amateur intuition. It was professional analysis. You knew exactly what to look for because you've done it before. For the first time since sitting down, genuine surprise crossed her features, followed immediately by something that might have been fear. I don't practice law anymore. Why not? The question hung between them like a challenge. Kareem watched her internal struggle play out across her face, the war between truth and self-preservation that he recognized from his own climb to power. Because lawyers require references, credentials, a clean professional history. Her voice carried a bitterness that spoke of recent wounds. All things that become complicated when your previous life explodes spectacularly. Your previous life, yes, which was... Maya set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. Does it matter that life is over? It matters because you're sitting in one of Manhattan's most expensive restaurants, casually preventing international financial fraud while pretending to be a struggling waitress. Either you're the most overqualified server in New York or there's a story worth hearing. Something in her expression shifted. The careful mask slipped just enough to reveal exhaustion that went bone deep. You really want to know? Her voice carried a challenge of its own. Fine. 2 years ago, I was a senior associate at Blackwell and Stern in London International Corporate Law, specializing in Middle Eastern and European banking regulations. I had a corner office, a six-figure salary, and a fiancé who happened to be the senior partner's son. Kareem felt his attention sharpen. Blackwell and Stern was legendary in legal circles, one of London's most prestigious firms handling acquisitions that shaped global markets. What happened? I discovered my fiancé and his father were using my regulatory expertise to help clients hide money laundering operations through legitimate banking channels. When I threatened to report them, they destroyed my career, my reputation, and my life. She met his eyes with defiant honesty. They made sure I could never practice law again anywhere in the world. The pieces began falling into place. A brilliant lawyer with specialized knowledge cast out from her profession and forced into survival mode. It explained the 5 languages, the wine knowledge, the ability to spot fraudulent contracts, and the bone-deep wariness that radiated from her despite her professional composure. So you became a waitress. I became invisible. Sometimes that's the safest thing to be. Kareem found himself genuinely impressed. Most people who fell from such heights crumbled completely. This woman had adapted, survived, even found a way to use her skills when it mattered. The resilience reminded him of his own journey from Dubai's slums to Manhattan's boardrooms. Invisibility is overrated, he said finally, especially when you possess rare talents. Talents that got me exiled from my profession, destroyed my relationships, and cost me everything I'd worked for. Maya's laugh held no humor. Forgive me if I'm not eager to make the same mistakes twice. What if I told you those weren't mistakes? The question seemed to surprise her. What do you mean? You chose integrity over comfort. You chose truth over security. In my experience, those are rarely mistakes, even when they're expensive. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her features. Easy to say when you're worth billions. Integrity doesn't pay rent. No, but it does something more valuable. It reveals character. And character, Maya, is the rarest commodity in my world. The way she looked at him then made Kareem realize the conversation had shifted into territory he hadn't intended to explore. This wasn't just professional curiosity anymore. Something about her combination of strength and vulnerability was awakening instincts he'd buried years ago beneath ambition and calculated relationships. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because I think we might be able to help each other." "I'm not interested in charity, Mr. Al-Fayez." "Good, because I'm not offering any." Kareem leaned forward, his voice taking on the tone that had closed billion-dollar deals. "I'm offering a job." The words seemed to echo between them. Maya's expression cycled through surprise, suspicion, and something that might have been hope before settling into careful neutrality. "What kind of job?" "The kind that uses your actual skills. I need someone who understands international banking law. Someone who can spot the kind of trap that nearly cost me 9 figures tonight. Someone who isn't already owned by the financial institutions I'm acquiring. You need a lawyer. I need your specific expertise and your specific perspective." Kareem paused, letting the offer sink in. "The question is whether you're ready to stop hiding behind invisibility and start using your talents again." Maya stared at him for a long moment, and Kareem found himself actually nervous about her answer. When had the opinion of a waitress become important to him? What would be expected of me? Due diligence on acquisitions, contract review, regulatory compliance, the same work you did in London, except this time you'd be working for someone who values honesty over convenience. And the salary, Kareem named a figure that made her eyes widen despite her attempt to maintain composure. It was more than generous, it was transformative. The kind of offer that could rebuild a life. That's a substantial offer for substantial work. "I don't make small investments, Maya, in businesses or people." The weight of his words settled between them. This wasn't just about employment. It was about resurrection, a chance to reclaim the life that had been stolen from her, to use her brilliance for something meaningful again. "I'd need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course, but don't think too long." Kareem rose from the table, leaving payment that would cover both their evening and a generous tip for the staff. Opportunities like this don't wait indefinitely. As he prepared to leave, something made him turn back. Maya was still seated, staring at the contract pages Heinrich had left behind her expression unreadable. "One more thing," Kareem said. "What you did tonight, spotting that fraud. Why did you speak up? You could have stayed invisible. Let me sign the contract, avoided getting involved." She looked up at him with those unusual amber eyes, and for a moment the careful walls she'd built around herself seemed to crack. "Because I've seen what happens when good people get destroyed by others' greed. I couldn't watch it happen again, even to a stranger." The honesty in her voice hit him like a physical blow. In his world of calculated relationships and strategic alliances, such genuine concern for another person's welfare was rarer than diamonds. "Think about my offer, Maya, but remember sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one at all." He left her sitting in the candlelight, surrounded by the evidence of her brilliance and the promise of a future that seemed impossible just hours before. And for the first time in years, Kareem Al-Fayez found himself hoping someone would say yes to him rather than simply expecting it. 3 days passed before Maya found herself standing outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Al-Fayez Technologies. The building stretched toward the Manhattan sky like a steel and crystal monument to ambition, its surface reflecting the city's relentless energy. She'd walked past it twice, gathering courage before finally approaching the security desk in the pristine marble lobby. "I have an appointment with Mr. Al-Fayez," she told the security guard, smoothing her one professional blazer with nervous fingers. It was 3 years old and showed the careful maintenance of someone who couldn't afford to replace it, but it was clean and pressed. The elevator ride to the 52nd floor felt endless. Through the glass walls, Manhattan spread out below, like a circuit board of light and movement. She tried to ignore the way her reflection looked small and uncertain against the backdrop of Kareem's empire. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area that belonged in an architectural magazine. Everything was sleek lines and expensive materials designed to intimidate and impress. The receptionist, a stunning woman who looked like she'd stepped off a fashion runway, barely glanced up from her computer. "Maya Nazari to see Mr. Al-Fayez," Maya announced, proud that her voice remained steady. "He's in a meeting, you can wait." The dismissal was polite but absolute. Maya settled into one of the leather chairs that probably cost more than her monthly rent and tried not to fidget. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see other office towers stretching toward the horizon, each one representing dreams and ambitions and fortunes won and lost. "Miss Nazari." She looked up to find a tall man in his mid-40s approaching, his smile warm and genuine. Unlike everyone else she'd encountered in the building, his demeanor suggested actual human warmth, rather than corporate polish. "I'm David Chen, Mr. Al-Fayez's business partner and oldest friend. He asked me to speak with you while he finishes his call with Tokyo." David led her down a hallway lined with modern art and past offices where serious-looking people conducted the business of global finance. His office, when they reached it, was marginally less intimidating than the reception area, but still spoke of significant success. "Coffee, water, something stronger?" David asked, settling behind his desk with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Coffee would be nice, thank you." As David prepared their drinks, Maya studied him carefully. In her legal career, she'd learned to read people quickly, their motivations, their loyalties, their potential as allies or threats. David Chen radiated the kind of steady reliability that spoke of deep integrity. "So," he said, handing her a steaming mug, "Kareem tells me you saved him from a rather expensive mistake the other night." "I simply pointed out an inconsistency in a contract. An inconsistency that would have cost him 9 figures. That's quite a catch for someone who's supposedly just a waitress." The comment wasn't accusatory, but Maya heard the unspoken question. She took a sip of coffee, excellent quality, she noted, and considered her response. "I studied international banking law before my circumstances changed. Kareem mentioned you were interested in joining our legal team." "I'm considering his offer." "Yes." David leaned back in his chair, studying her with intelligent eyes. "Can I be frank with you, Miss Nazari? Please. Kareem Al-Fayez is one of the most brilliant business minds I've ever encountered. He's also one of the most driven, demanding, and occasionally ruthless people you'll ever meet. He expects excellence, demands loyalty, and has no patience for mediocrity or deception." Maya felt her spine straighten. "Are you trying to discourage me from taking the position?" "On the contrary, I'm trying to prepare you for what working with him will be like." David's expression grew serious. But I'm also wondering why someone with your obvious qualifications is serving tables instead of practicing law. The question hung between them like a test. Maya had prepared for this conversation, practiced different versions of the truth that might satisfy curiosity without revealing too much. But something about David's straightforward manner encouraged honesty. I made enemies in London, powerful enemies who ensure I can't practice law anywhere in the world. What kind of enemies? The kind who don't forgive whistleblowing even when it prevents criminal activity. David nodded slowly as if her answer confirmed something he had suspected. That actually makes me feel better about recommending you. Really, why? Because it means you chose principle over profit. In our business, that kind of integrity is rarer than you might expect. He stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. Kareem built this company from nothing, you know. Started with a laptop and a dream in a studio apartment in Brooklyn. Every acquisition, every merger, every success has been earned through intelligence, determination, and an absolute refusal to compromise his principles. That's impressive. It's also lonely. Success at his level tends to attract people with ulterior motives. Employees who want access to his wealth, women who want his status, business partners who want his connections. David turned back to face her. What he needs, what the company needs, is someone who values competence over personal gain. Before Maya could respond, the office door opened and Kareem strode in with the confident energy that seemed to precede him everywhere. Today he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than she'd made in 6 months of waiting tables, but it was his presence that filled the room rather than his expensive clothing. Maya, thank you for coming. His attention focused on her with laser intensity. I trust David has been entertaining you with embarrassing stories about my early failures. Just establishing context, David replied with a grin. I was telling Miss Nazari about your commitment to integrity in business dealings. Ah, the integrity speech. That means he likes you. Kareem settled into the chair next to Maya close enough that she caught the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and distinctly masculine. Have you had time to consider my offer? The directness of the question shouldn't have surprised her, but Maya found herself momentarily tongue-tied. This close, she could see the intensity in his dark eyes, the sharp intelligence that had built an empire in something else. A hint of vulnerability that he probably didn't realize he was revealing. I have several concerns, she said finally, such as references for one. As I mentioned, my previous employers aren't likely to provide positive recommendations. I don't need their opinions. I need your skills. Professional credentials are less important than proven competence. You've already demonstrated both your legal expertise and your integrity. What else concerns you? Maya took a breath, gathering courage for the conversation she'd been dreading. The salary you mentioned is far above market rate for someone with my employment history. It makes me wonder what additional expectations might be involved. The question hung in the air like smoke. David's eyebrows rose slightly and Kareem's expression grew very still. When he spoke, his voice carried a coldness that reminded Maya exactly how dangerous it could be to misjudge powerful men. Let me be absolutely clear, Miss Nazari. I am offering you a position based solely on your professional qualifications. Any implication otherwise is both insulting and inaccurate. The ice in his tone made her stomach clench, but she forced herself to maintain eye contact. I apologize if I offended you, but given my past experiences with powerful men in professional settings, I needed to establish boundaries. Something in her voice, perhaps the echo of old pain, seemed to penetrate his anger. Kareem's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained watchful. What happened to you in London? I trusted the wrong people with the right information. It cost me everything. Maya met his gaze steadily. I won't make that mistake again. Good. Trust should be earned, not given freely. Kareem leaned back in his chair, and when he spoke again, his voice had returned to its normal tone. The position I'm offering is legitimate, professional, and based entirely on your legal expertise. The salary reflects both the complexity of the work and the value I place on integrity. Nothing more, nothing less. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by embarrassment at her own suspicions. I'm sorry I had to ask. You had to protect yourself. I respect that. Kareem stood and moved to David's window, his silhouette sharp against the Manhattan skyline. The question now is whether you're ready to start rebuilding your career or if you're content to remain invisible forever. The challenge in his words stung, but it also awakened something she'd thought was dead: ambition. For 2 years, she'd focused solely on survival, on staying hidden, on avoiding the kind of risks that had destroyed her life in London. But looking at Kareem's empire spread out below them, she felt the first stirring of hunger for something more than mere existence. "If I accept," she said carefully, "what would be my first assignment?" Kareem turned from the window, and the smile that crossed his face was both triumphant and genuinely warm. "Due diligence on a potential acquisition in Dubai, a telecommunications company with some very interesting regulatory complications." Dubai. The word carried weight she wasn't sure she was ready for. "Problems with that?" "No, just, it's been a long time since I've traveled for business." "Then it's time to get reacquainted with the world you belong in." The conviction in his voice was compelling, almost hypnotic. Maya found herself imagining what it would feel like to use her skills to engage in the complex intellectual challenges that had once defined her professional life. When would you need an answer? Now. The simple word hit her like a physical blow. "The Dubai deal is moving quickly. If you're going to be part of this company, you need to be all in. Half measures don't work in my business." Maya looked between Kareem and David, seeing expectation and encouragement in their faces. This was it, the moment that would determine whether she remained trapped in survival mode or took the leap back into the life she'd lost. "All right," she said, the words coming out stronger than she'd expected. "I accept." Kareem's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face from intimidating to almost boyishly pleased. "Excellent. David will handle the employment paperwork and arrange your travel documents. We leave for Dubai tomorrow night." This is too important to delegate entirely. I'll be overseeing the negotiations personally." His expression grew serious. "Are you ready for this, Maya? Because once we start, there's no hiding behind other people's expectations. Your work will be scrutinized by some of the sharpest legal minds in international business." The question was both a challenge and an invitation. Maya felt years of suppressed ambition rising like a tide in her chest. "I'm ready," she said, and for the first time in 2 years, she actually believed it. As she left the Al Fayez building an hour later, employment contracts signed and travel arrangements being expedited, Maya caught her reflection in the lobby's polished marble. The woman looking back at her appeared different somehow. Straighter shoulders, brighter eyes, the faint suggestion of purpose returning to her posture. Tomorrow night, she would board a plane to Dubai as a senior legal consultant for one of the world's most successful companies. 6 months ago, she'd been serving coffee and dodging creditors. The transformation felt surreal, almost too good to be true. But as the Manhattan evening settled around her, Maya allowed herself to feel something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges awaited in Dubai, she was no longer just surviving. She was finally ready to live again. The first-class cabin of Emirates Flight 202 felt like a cocoon of luxury as it sliced through the night sky toward Dubai. Maya had never flown first class before. Even during her successful years in London, she'd been too practical to spend money on such extravagances. Now surrounded by cream leather and polished wood, she felt both grateful and slightly overwhelmed. Kareem sat across the aisle, his laptop open and fingers flying across the keyboard with the focused intensity that seemed to define everything he did. Occasionally he would glance her way, offering a brief smile or checking if she needed anything, but mostly he was absorbed in the endless stream of emails and documents that apparently never stopped flowing in his world. "Nervous about returning to Dubai?" she asked during one of his brief breaks from typing. "Nervous, no." Kareem closed his laptop and turned his full attention to her. "But returning home always brings up memories I prefer to keep buried. Bad memories. Complicated ones." His expression grew distant. "Dubai is where I learned that survival sometimes requires becoming someone you never intended to be." The vulnerability in his admission surprised her. During their brief time working together in New York, Kareem had projected unwavering confidence and control. This glimpse of uncertainty made him seem more human, more approachable. "Is that why you left?" "I left because I had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Sometimes that's what it takes to build something meaningful." Maya understood that logic intimately. Her own exile from London had been driven by similar desperation, the need to rebuild from absolute destruction. What about you? Kareem asked. Any second thoughts about diving back into international law? Dozens, she admitted. But they're outnumbered by the desire to use my brain for something more complex than memorizing wine lists. His laugh was warm and genuine. Imagine that was frustrating. You have no idea. Do you know how many times I wanted to correct customers who mispronounced chateau or explain why their wine choice was completely wrong for their meal? But you didn't. No, invisible people don't correct their betters. The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. 2 years of suppressing her intelligence, her education, her natural instincts to engage and analyze it had taken a toll she was only beginning to recognize. You're not invisible anymore, Kareem said quietly. No, now I'm conspicuous, which is almost worse. Your legal team in Dubai is going to wonder why you hired someone with no references in a mysterious employment gap. Let me worry about my legal team. Your job is to focus on the Sharif Communications acquisition. Kareem reached for a thick folder from his briefcase. Founded 15 years ago by Hassan Sharif, built into one of the region's most successful independent telecom companies. On paper, it's exactly the kind of acquisition that would expand our Middle Eastern operations significantly. On paper, there are regulatory complications that don't make sense. Licensing issues, government contract disputes, personnel problems that seem designed to devalue the company right before we're scheduled to make an offer. Maya felt her analytical mind engaging the familiar thrill of puzzle solving beginning to override her nervousness. You think it's orchestrated? I think Hassan Sharif is either the unluckiest businessman in Dubai or someone is deliberately sabotaging his company to force a lowball sale. And I want you to figure out which. I want you to dig deeper than our Dubai legal team has been able to. Sometimes an outsider's perspective reveals things that local experts miss. The plane hit a patch of turbulence, and Maya gripped her armrest as the cabin shuddered. Kareem noticed her discomfort and reached across the aisle, his hand covering hers in a gesture that was both comforting and surprisingly intimate. It's just air pockets, he said softly. Nothing to worry about. The warmth of his palm against her skin sent an unexpected jolt of awareness through her. This close, she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the slight stubble that suggested he'd been working since dawn, the way his mouth curved when he was trying to be reassuring rather than commanding. Sorry, she said, not pulling her hand away. I'm usually a better flyer than this. Stress affects people differently. You're taking on a lot of changes very quickly. The concern in his voice was genuine, not the polite interest of an employer checking on a subordinate. It was the kind of personal attention that made dangerous feelings stir to life in her chest. I can handle it, she said finally, withdrawing her hand from his. I know you can, but that doesn't mean you should have to handle it alone. Before she could respond to that loaded statement, the flight attendant appeared to refresh their drinks and inform them that they would begin descent into Dubai within the hour. The moment of intimacy dissolved, replaced by the practical realities of business travel and upcoming challenges. But as Maya looked out the window at the lights of the Persian Gulf beginning to appear below, she couldn't shake the memory of Kareem's hand on hers or the way his concern had felt both professional and deeply personal. The Dubai International Airport was a monument to global connectivity and Middle Eastern ambition. Even at midnight, it bustled with the energy of a city that never truly slept. As they moved through customs and toward the waiting car service, Maya marveled at the mix of traditional and modern that defined everything around them. First time in the UAE, Kareem asked as their driver navigated through traffic toward the city center. First time anywhere in the Middle East, actually. My parents immigrated to America when I was very young. Then you're in for an experience. Dubai is unlike anywhere else in the world. It's what happens when unlimited ambition meets unlimited resources. Through the car windows, the city revealed itself in layers of light and shadow. Traditional souks nestled alongside gleaming skyscrapers, while luxury hotels rose from the desert like monuments to human determination. It was beautiful and overwhelming and completely foreign, yet something about it felt familiar in a way she couldn't explain. It suits you, Maya said without thinking. What do you mean, the city? It's ambitious, successful, but also slightly untamed, like it's still becoming whatever it's meant to be. Kareem studied her profile as she gazed out at the passing skyline. That's a surprisingly accurate assessment from someone who's been here for all of 30 minutes. I'm good at reading between lines. It's part of being a lawyer. Former lawyer, current legal consultant, he corrected with a small smile. I'm reclaiming my professional identity. Remember, the hotel, the Burj Al Arab, appeared before them like something from a fantasy novel, its sail-shaped silhouette illuminated against the dark Persian Gulf. Maya had seen pictures, of course, but the reality was breathtaking. We'll be staying in the royal suite, Kareem said casually as they entered the opulent lobby. It has separate bedrooms and a full office setup for our work. The clarification was unnecessary but appreciated. Despite his assurances about the professional nature of their relationship, being alone with Kareem in one of the world's most romantic cities felt charged with potential complications. The Hassan Sharif meeting is scheduled for 10 tomorrow morning, he continued as they rode the elevator to their floor. That gives you tonight to review the files and tomorrow morning to formulate initial impressions. And after the meeting, we dig deeper. Hassan strikes me as a man with secrets, and secrets have a way of revealing themselves when the right pressure is applied. The suite was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering panoramic views of the Gulf furnishings that belonged in a palace, and enough space for a small conference. But what struck Maya most was the way Kareem moved through it with casual familiarity, as if luxury of this magnitude was simply expected rather than extraordinary. The office space is through here, he said, leading her to a separate room equipped with computers, printers, and a conference table overlooking the water. Everything you need should be available, but let me know if you require additional resources. This is perfect, thank you. Maya. Something in his voice made her turn to face him fully. I want you to know that bringing you here isn't just about the Sharif acquisition. What you did at Lumiere, spotting that fraudulent contract, it reminded me why I got into business in the first place, which was to build something meaningful to create success that wasn't built on other people's failures. His expression grew serious. In my world, that kind of integrity is rare. I don't want to lose it again. The intensity of his words sent warmth spreading through her chest. This wasn't about professional qualifications or convenient skill sets. This was about something deeper, more personal. You won't lose it, she said quietly. I promise. Good, because tomorrow we're going to discover exactly what Hassan Sharif is hiding, and I have a feeling it's going to test both our principles and our partnership. As Kareem retired to his bedroom, leaving her alone in the office with files full of financial mysteries to unravel, Maya realized she was no longer nervous about the upcoming challenges. Instead, she felt energized, focused, and more alive than she'd been since London. Whatever secrets they uncovered tomorrow, whatever complications arose from working so closely with a man who was becoming dangerously important to her, she was ready. For the first time in years, she was exactly where she belonged. But as she opened the first file on Sharif Communications, a name on the letterhead made her blood freeze. Listed as the company's London legal counsel was Blackwell and Stern, the firm that had destroyed her career and exiled her from the legal profession. The same firm whose senior partners had threatened to ruin her life if she ever practiced law again. And now somehow they were connected to Kareem's most important acquisition. The coincidence seemed impossible, which meant it probably wasn't a coincidence at all. Morning in Dubai arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their suite, but Maya had been awake for hours, surrounded by documents that painted an increasingly disturbing picture of the Sharif Communications acquisition. Kareem found her in the office at 7 a.m., still in the clothes she'd worn the previous evening. Coffee cups scattered across the conference table, like archaeological evidence of a sleepless night spent unraveling mysteries. Did you sleep at all? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I couldn't not after what I found. Maya gestured to the papers spread before her like puzzle pieces. Kareem, this isn't just corporate sabotage. It's something much more complex and much more personal. He poured himself coffee from the service that had appeared sometime during the night and settled into the chair across from her. In the morning light, he looked younger somehow, his hair slightly mussed and his usual corporate armor replaced by casual elegance. Tell me. Blackwell and Stern has been Sharif Communications' London legal counsel for 3 years. She met his eyes. The same firm that destroyed my career is directly connected to your biggest acquisition. Maya pushed a contract across the table. But here's what's interesting. All of their recent legal work has been designed to create problems, not solve them. Kareem studied the document, his expression growing darker with each page. These contract modifications would make the company nearly impossible to acquire cleanly. Exactly. Someone at Blackwell is deliberately sabotaging Hassan Sharif's business, but doing it subtly enough that it looks like organic complications rather than intentional interference. The question is why Maya reached in for another file, this one marked with Hassan Sharif's personal information. I think I know. Hassan's daughter, Amira Sharif, was a student at Oxford 3 years ago. According to these notes, she was engaged to someone in London, for the engagement was abruptly broken. You think there's a connection to your situation? I think my ex-fiance's family specializes in destroying people who threaten their interests. The timeline matches perfectly: Amira's broken engagement, the beginning of Sharif Communications' legal troubles, and my own exile from the profession. Kareem was quiet for a long moment, processing implications that made Maya's stomach clench with dread. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a coldness she'd never heard before. Are you telling me that bringing you to Dubai has put you in direct contact with the people who ruined your life? It's possible, probably even. And you didn't think to mention this connection last night. The accusation in his tone stung, but Maya forced herself to remain calm. I discovered it at 3 this morning. I've been trying to understand the implications before jumping to conclusions. The implications are that I've potentially compromised your safety by bringing you here. Or, Maya said, standing and moving to the window overlooking the Persian Gulf, you've given me the opportunity to finally understand what really happened to me in London. She could feel Kareem watching her, could sense the internal debate between his protective instincts and his business objectives. When he joined her at the window, his presence was both comforting and dangerously distracting. We can call off the acquisition. Find another telecommunications company. Avoid the entire situation. Absolutely not. Her vehemence seemed to surprise him. Maya, for 2 years I've been running from shadows and hiding from my own life. If Blackwell and Stern is behind Hassan Sharif's problems, then helping you acquire his company cleanly isn't just good business. It's justice. Justice can be expensive. Are you prepared for what it might cost? She turned to face him, surprised by how close he was standing, close enough to see the concern in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body in the morning sunlight. Are you, oh, the question hung between them like a challenge. This wasn't just about business anymore, and they both knew it. This was about trust, about taking risks for each other, about the dangerous territory they'd been approaching since that first night at Lumiere. We meet with Hassan in 2 hours, Kareem said finally. If you're right about Blackwell's involvement, he's going to need allies more than he realizes. And if I'm wrong, then we proceed with a standard acquisition and hope your past stays buried. But even as he said it, both of them knew that secrets this tangled rarely stayed buried for long. The offices of Sharif Communications occupied 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Dubai's financial district, with panoramic views of the city's ever-expanding skyline. Hassan Sharif met them in a conference room that managed to blend traditional Middle Eastern hospitality with cutting-edge business technology. Hassan himself was a surprise younger than Maya had expected, perhaps 50, with intelligent eyes that seemed to weigh every word before speaking. But what struck her most was the exhaustion that seemed to radiate from him, the weariness of a man fighting battles he didn't fully understand. Mr. Al-Fayez, thank you for considering our company for acquisition, Hassan said as they settled around the polished conference table. I'll be honest, we need this partnership more than pride would normally allow me to admit. Business is business, Hassan. The question is whether we can structure a deal that benefits everyone involved. Kareem's tone was professionally cordial, but Maya could sense his increased alertness. I've brought Ms. Nazari to review the legal complications that seem to be affecting your operations. Hassan's attention shifted to Maya with polite interest. Ms. Nazari, your expertise is in international corporate law. Among other things, I specialize in regulatory compliance and contract analysis. Maya opened her briefcase with deliberate care. I've been reviewing your recent legal documentation, and I have some concerns about the advice you've been receiving. Something flickered in Hassan's expression, hope perhaps, or recognition that someone finally understood his situation. You've identified problems. I've identified patterns. Your London legal counsel has been creating obstacles rather than removing them, contract modifications that invite regulatory scrutiny, licensing applications that contain deliberate errors, partnership agreements structured to fail. Hassan's face went pale. That's, that's exactly what I've been suspecting, but I couldn't prove it. Why would your own lawyer sabotage your business? Kareem asked, though Maya suspected he already knew the answer. Because they're not really my lawyers, Hassan said quietly. 3 years ago, my daughter Amira was studying at Oxford. She became engaged to a young man from a prominent London legal family. The engagement ended badly with accusations and threats, and suddenly this prestigious firm was offering their services at rates I couldn't refuse. Blackwell and Stern, Maya said. Hassan's surprise was genuine. You know them. Unfortunately, yes. They destroyed my career when I threatened to expose their money laundering operations. The conference room fell silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning and the distant sounds of Dubai traffic. Hassan stared at Maya with dawning understanding, while Kareem's expression grew dangerously cold. James Blackstone, Hassan said finally. That was the name of Amira's fiancé. When she discovered he was using her to gain access to our family's business connections, she broke the engagement. He threatened to ruin us both. And he's been systematically doing exactly that, Maya confirmed, using legal expertise to create problems that would force you into a desperate sale, probably to associates of his who would acquire your company at a fraction of its true value. Can you prove this? Kareem asked. Maya reached for her laptop and pulled up the analysis she'd been working on since dawn. Every contract modification, every regulatory complication, every licensing issue can be traced back to advice from Blackwell and Stern. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for. More importantly, Hassan said, his voice gaining strength, can you fix it? I can do better than that. I can expose the entire operation and make sure James Blackstone never manipulates another client. The determination in her voice seemed to surprise everyone in the room, including herself. But as the pieces of the conspiracy became clear, Maya felt something awakening in her that had been dormant since London, the hunger for justice that had driven her to become a lawyer in the first place. What do you need from us? Kareem asked. Access to all of your legal files, communication records with Blackwell, and permission to contact regulatory authorities in both London and Dubai. Done, Hassan said immediately. Anything you need. If there's a chance to save my company and expose these people, I'll give you whatever resources you require. As they spent the next hour reviewing documents and planning strategy, Maya felt the familiar thrill of complex legal work engaging every facet of her intelligence. This was what she'd been missing during her years of exile, the satisfaction of using her skills to solve meaningful problems and protect innocent people. But more than that, she was aware of Kareem watching her work with something that looked like admiration. When she argued a particularly complex point about regulatory law, his smile was proud. When she identified another layer of Blackstone's deception, his nod conveyed both approval and something warmer. You're remarkable, he said quietly during a break while Hassan made phone calls to gather additional documents. I'm doing my job. No, you're doing what you were meant to do. This is who you really are, isn't it? Not the invisible waitress, not the cautious survivor, but the brilliant, fierce advocate who fights for justice. The admiration in his voice made something flutter dangerously in her chest. I'm the same person I've always been. Maybe, but now I'm seeing all of you. Before she could respond, Hassan returned with an expression of grim satisfaction. I've been in touch with 2 other business owners who used Blackwell and Stern over the past 3 years. Both experienced similar patterns of legal sabotage, followed by mysterious acquisition offers from London-based investors. It's a systematic operation, Maya said. They identify successful Middle Eastern businesses, infiltrate their legal processes, create artificial problems, then arrange for associates to acquire the companies at distressed prices. Which means, Kareem added, that stopping them isn't just about saving Hassan's company, it's about exposing an international fraud operation. The magnitude of what they were facing settled over the room like a challenge. This wasn't simply a business acquisition anymore. It was a battle against the same forces that had destroyed Maya's life and were now threatening other innocent people. So, Hassan said, what's our next move? Maya looked between the 2 men who were now depending on her expertise, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of purpose. combining into something powerful and transformative. "We give James Blackstone exactly what he deserves," she said. "We expose everything." But as she spoke the words, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was just beginning, and that James Blackstone wouldn't surrender his profitable conspiracy without consequences that none of them were prepared for. The call came at midnight, shattering the focused quiet of their Dubai hotel suite, where Maya had been working for 18 straight hours to build their case against Blackwell and Stern. Kareem answered on the second ring, his voice immediately alert despite the late hour. "Al-Fayez." Maya watched his expression change from professional attention to cold fury as he listened to whoever was on the other end. When he finally hung up, the silence in the room felt ominous. "That was my security team in New York," he said quietly. "Someone broke into my office tonight. Nothing was stolen, but every file related to the Sharif acquisition was photographed." The implications hit Maya like ice water in her veins. "They know we're on to them. It gets worse. David received a call an hour ago from someone claiming to represent your former employers in London. They're threatening legal action if you continue practicing international law." Fear and anger warred in her chest, but anger won. After 2 years of hiding, of accepting defeat, of letting James Blackstone's threats control her life, Maya felt something snap into place that felt like her old self returning. "Let them threaten. We have evidence of systematic fraud affecting multiple companies across 2 continents. A few intimidation tactics aren't going to stop us now. Maya, these people destroyed your career once. They could try." She stood and moved to the window overlooking Dubai's glittering skyline, gathering courage from the city's audacious confidence. "But this time I'm not alone, and this time I have proof of what they've been doing." Kareem joined her at the window, his presence both protective and encouraging. "Are you sure about this? Once we move forward, there's no going back to invisibility." "I don't want to be invisible anymore. I want to be exactly who I was always meant to be, a lawyer who fights for justice no matter how powerful the opposition." The conviction in her voice seemed to surprise them both. But as she spoke the words, Maya realized they were true. The scared, defeated woman who had fled London was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more determined than she'd ever been before. "Then we finish this," Kareem said. "All of it." The next morning brought Hassan Sharif to their suite with news that confirmed their worst fears and best hopes simultaneously. His daughter Amira had arrived from London overnight, carrying evidence that would transform their business dispute into an international legal case. Amira Sharif was 25, beautiful in the way that suggested both intelligence and strength, and she radiated the kind of quiet fury that came from being systematically betrayed by someone she had trusted with her heart. "Ms. Nazari," she said, settling into the conference room chair with determined grace, "my father tells me you're the lawyer James Blackstone tried to destroy. Former lawyer, current legal consultant, and yes, James and his father made it very clear that I would never practice law again if I exposed their money laundering operations." "Ah, then you understand exactly what kind of man I was engaged to." Amira opened her briefcase with the precise movements of someone who had planned this moment carefully. "I brought copies of everything: personal emails, business communications, recorded phone conversations, 3 years worth of evidence that James has been using our relationship to infiltrate and sabotage Middle Eastern businesses." The documents Amira spread across the table were devastating email threads discussing the Dubai project and neutralizing competition through legal channels. Recorded conversations where James bragged about manipulating clients into vulnerable positions, financial records showing payments from mysterious London investors to Blackwell and Stern for consulting services that coincided with each business sabotage. This is conspiracy, fraud, and extortion operating across international boundaries. Maya said, her legal mind cataloging charges even as her personal satisfaction grew. "With this evidence, we can not only clear your father's company, but expose the entire operation." "There's more," Amira said quietly. "James didn't just target our family's business. He's been collecting information about dozens of successful Middle Eastern entrepreneurs, their families, their personal relationships. He's building a database of potential targets for future operations." Kareem's expression had grown progressively darker as he reviewed the evidence. "This isn't just fraud. It's systematic economic warfare disguised as legal services." "Which means," Maya added, feeling pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place, "that James Blackstone isn't just a corrupt lawyer. He's the center of an international conspiracy designed to destabilize and acquire Middle Eastern businesses through legal manipulation. The magnitude of what they were facing settled over the room like a storm cloud. This wasn't simply about saving Hassan's company or clearing Maya's professional reputation. They were confronting a sophisticated operation that had probably affected hundreds of people and millions of dollars in fraudulent acquisitions. "So, what do we do?" Hassan asked. Maya looked around the table at the faces depending on her expertise, feeling the weight of responsibility and the thrill of purpose combining into something transformative. "We do what James Blackstone never expected," she said. "We fight back with the truth." As Maya reached for her phone to begin coordinating with the regulatory authorities in London and Dubai, it buzzed with an incoming message. The text was from an unknown number, but the content made her blood run cold. "Tell Al Fayez we have an offer he can't refuse. The Sharif deal is poisoned. Walk away now or we'll expose everything including his past in Dubai. You're not the only one with secrets, Ms. Nazari." She looked up to find Karim watching her, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" Maya handed him the phone without a word. As he read the message, something flickered across his face, not fear, but something darker, more complex. "It seems Mr. Blackstone has decided to join us in person," Karim said, his voice dangerously soft. "He's arriving in Dubai tomorrow." "What does he mean about your past?" Maya asked, unable to keep the question inside. Karim's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw vulnerability beneath the confident exterior. "Everyone has secrets, Maya, even me." The tension in the room shifted, charged with new questions and unspoken concerns. Whatever victory they had been celebrating moments before now felt premature. James Blackstone was coming to Dubai, and he was bringing threats that extended beyond professional intimidation. "Will his threats matter?" Amira asked, looking between them. "Can he really hurt you?" "The question isn't whether he can hurt us," Karim replied, his gaze still locked with Maya's. "The question is whether what we're fighting for is worth the pain." As the room fell silent, Maya realized they had reached a crossroads that would define not just their professional relationship, but something much more personal. Whatever secrets Karim was hiding, whatever past James Blackstone threatened to expose, they were about to become part of this increasingly complex battle. And somehow Maya knew that nothing between her and Karim would ever be the same again. The Dubai night had fallen hours ago, but sleep remained elusive. Maya stood on the balcony of their suite, watching the city lights reflect off the Persian Gulf. Behind her, the door slid open and Karim joined her at the railing, his presence a silent acknowledgement of the conversation they could no longer avoid. "You want to know what Blackstone has on me?" he said. It wasn't a question. "Only if you want to tell me." Maya kept her eyes on the horizon. "Everyone has the right to their secrets. Not when those secrets put others at risk." Karim's voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. "Not when they might be used as weapons against people I care about." The hesitation in his words made her turn to him. In the ambient glow of the Dubai skyline, his face looked younger, more vulnerable than the corporate mask he typically wore. "When I was 16, my mother became seriously ill." He began, his eyes fixed on some distant point across the water. "We lived in Al Quoz, one of Dubai's poorest neighborhoods back then. No health insurance, no savings, no hope for the treatment she needed." Maya remained silent, sensing the importance of this confession. "I'd always been good with computers. Started programming when I was 10, taught myself by sneaking into internet cafes and watching tutorials." His fingers tapped against the railing, a subtle rhythm of remembered anxiety. "When my mother's condition worsened, I made a choice that would change everything." "You hacked someone," Maya said softly. Karim nodded. "Not just someone, Emirates National Bank. I created a series of ghost transactions that funneled money into an untraceable account, enough to pay for my mother's treatment at a private hospital in Abu Dhabi. You were caught. Within 72 hours, the police came to the hospital where my mother was recovering." His voice tightened. "I was facing years in prison. My mother would have been left to die alone." The night breeze carried the scent of salt and desert as Karim continued. "But then something unexpected happened. A man named Abdul Rahman visited me in detention. He was one of the bank's major shareholders, but instead of pressing charges, he offered me a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Work for him. Use my skills to help his business interests." In return, all charges would be dropped, and my mother would receive the best medical care available. Kareem's laugh held no humor. It wasn't really a choice at all. Maya could feel the pieces falling into place. Abdul became your mentor and my keeper. For 6 years, I worked in his shadow building, my knowledge, my skills, my connections. Kareem's voice dropped lower. Some of what I did was legitimate business. Some was not. Abdul's interests extended into areas that existed in legal gray zones or sometimes well beyond them. Did your mother recover? She lived 3 more years. Enough time to see me start to succeed, not enough to see me break free. His face hardened. When she died, I used everything I had learned from Abdul, the legitimate and the illegitimate, to start my own company. I leveraged his connections while carefully extracting myself from his more questionable enterprises. Maya processed this revelation, measuring it against the man she thought she knew. And Blackstone discovered this history. James Blackstone's threat isn't about exposing a teenage hacking incident. It's about revealing the work I did for Abdul, work that could still have legal implications even now. Kareem finally turned to face her. My entire empire is built on a foundation that could crumble if the wrong details emerged. The vulnerability in his eyes struck Maya deeply. This wasn't the confession of a man seeking absolution. It was the warning of someone trying to protect her from the blast radius of his past. Why tell me this? Because you deserve to know what you're risking by standing with me against Blackstone. His hand found hers on the railing, his touch tentative, almost apologetic. You've already lost one career because of men who abuse power. I won't let you lose another because of my mistakes. Maya looked down at their hands, then back to Kareem's face. Is that what you think I am? Someone who runs at the first sign of trouble? I think you're someone who has already paid too high a price for other people's crimes. Then you don't know me as well as you think you do. Maya's voice strengthened with each word. I didn't become a lawyer to defend only the innocent and unblemished. I became a lawyer to fight for justice even when it's complicated, even when it's messy. She could see the surprise register in his expression, followed by something deeper, more profound. Besides, she continued, what Blackstone is doing isn't just about you or me. It's about dozens of business owners being systematically targeted because of their heritage. If we back down now, who will stop him? Kareem studied her face for a long moment. You're not what I expected, Maya Nazari. Neither are you, Kareem Al-Fayez. She squeezed his hand once before releasing it. Now we have work to do before Blackstone arrives tomorrow. I suggest we get started. As they turned back toward the suite, Maya felt something shift between them. A new understanding built not on the perfect images they had tried to project, but on the flawed human reality of who they truly were. And somehow that felt stronger than any professional bond could ever be. The conference room at Al-Fayez Technologies' Dubai office hummed with tension. Maya sat beside Kareem at the head of the polished table, acutely aware of the high stakes of this confrontation. Across from them, James Blackstone adjusted his Savile Row suit with the casual arrogance of a man accustomed to intimidating others into submission. At 35, James possessed the cold good looks of old British aristocracy. Blonde hair, perfectly coiffed blue eyes, calculating thin lips perpetually curled into something between a smile and a sneer. Beside him sat his father, Alexander Blackstone, the founder of Blackwell and Stern. Where the son projected youthful arrogance, the father exuded patrician authority, his silver hair and immaculate appearance belying his 68 years. I appreciate you agreeing to meet, Alexander began, his British accent crisp and precise. I believe we can resolve this situation amicably without unnecessary complications for all involved. Kareem leaned back in his chair, projecting a relaxed confidence that Maya knew masked intense focus. By situation, I assume you mean your systematic campaign to defraud Middle Eastern businesses through legal manipulation. James's smile tightened. That's quite an accusation, Mr. Al-Fayez, one that could be considered libelous without substantial evidence. Evidence like this, Maya slid a folder across the table. Emails detailing your strategy to create artificial regulatory problems for Sharif Communications. Or perhaps these recorded conversations where you discuss forcing distressed sales to your investment partners. On the color drained from James's face as he flipped through the documents. Alexander remained impassive, though Maya noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. Where did you get these? James demanded. Your ex-fiancée sends her regards, Kareem replied smoothly. Amira Sharif has quite a memory for details and apparently a talent for record-keeping. Alexander placed a restraining hand on his son's arm before addressing Maya directly. Ms. Nazari, I'm surprised to see you practicing law again, given our previous understanding about the consequences of such actions. I'm not practicing law, Mr. Blackstone. I'm consulting on a specific business matter. Maya maintained steady eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. Though I'm curious which regulatory body you plan to complain to this time. The same ones who will be reviewing evidence of your firm's systematic fraud. Alexander's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Let's dispense with the theatrics, shall we? We all know how these matters typically resolve. Everyone has secrets they'd prefer to keep buried, some more damaging than others. He turned to Kareem. Your relationship with Abdul Rahman, for instance. The early funding of Al Fayez Technologies through channels that might not withstand regulatory scrutiny. The creative accounting practices during your company's first 3 years. Kareem's face remained perfectly composed. Is there a point to this recitation of allegations, or are you simply demonstrating the depth of your research? The point, Mr. Al Fayez, is that mutually assured destruction benefits no one. Alexander steepled his fingers. We're prepared to restructure the Sharif Communications contracts to facilitate your acquisition. In return, we ask only for your discretion regarding certain business practices you may have misinterpreted. And Miss Nazari's professional future could be restored. James added his tone, suggesting he was offering an extraordinary favor. We could issue a formal retraction of previous complaints, clear the path for her reinstatement to the bar. Everyone walks away satisfied. Maya felt a surge of anger at their assumption that her principles could be bought so easily, but she kept her expression neutral, waiting for Kareem's response. Kareem was silent for a moment, then leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You know what I've learned in business, Mr. Blackstone. The most dangerous negotiating position isn't when you have nothing to lose. It's when what you stand to gain matters more than what you might lose. He stood slowly, commanding the room with his presence. You've miscalculated. Whatever damage you think you can do to my reputation or my company pales in comparison to the satisfaction I'll take in watching you answer for your crimes. Alexander's composed facade cracked slightly. Be reasonable, Al Fayez. No one emerges unscathed from this kind of conflict. Your board of directors might question your judgment when certain details of your past emerge. Perhaps, but you see, unlike you, I've never pretended to be something I'm not. Kareem's smile was cold. I built my company despite my past, not by hiding it. Can you say the same? James stood abruptly. This is absurd. You're throwing away a perfectly reasonable compromise because of what, some misplaced sense of justice, or is it something else? His gaze shifted between Kareem and Maya with sudden understanding. Ah, I see. How touching. The billionaire and the disgraced lawyer united against the system. I think we're finished here, Maya said, rising to her feet. We've only just begun, Maya. James's voice dripped with malice. You think you destroyed your career the first time, wait until we're done with you now. Are you recording this meeting, James? Maya asked calmly. The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? I asked if you were recording this meeting because we are. She gestured to the discreet camera in the corner of the room. And threats like the one you just made tend to strengthen obstruction of justice charges when combined with evidence of systematic fraud. Alexander stood adjusting his tie with precise movements that betrayed his anger. This conversation is over. My son sometimes speaks impulsively, but our position remains unchanged. Consider carefully what you're risking, both of you. As the Blackstones gathered their materials to leave, Alexander paused at the door. One last thing, Mr. Al Fayez. Abdul Rahman sends his regards. He was quite interested to hear about your current difficulties. The door closed behind them, leaving Kareem and Maya in silence. The mention of Abdul's name hung in the air like a physical threat. That went about as expected, Kareem said, finally, his voice tight. They're desperate, Maya replied. Those threats were a tactical mistake. They've confirmed they're aware of their own criminality. The mention of Abdul wasn't a mistake, it was a warning. Kareem ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. If they've contacted him, This just got considerably more complicated. Is he still powerful? Abdul, he practically owns half of Dubai's private sector, and he has never been fond of loose ends. Kareem's expression darkened, which is exactly what I became when I left his organization. Maya moved closer, placing a hand on his arm. Then we accelerate our timeline. We need to file complaints with the regulatory bodies today, not next week. Maya, you don't understand. Abdul doesn't operate within regulatory frameworks. The buzz of Kareem's phone interrupted him. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting from concern to alarm. What is it? Maya asked. It's David. There's been a security breach at our New York headquarters. Someone accessed our secure servers and downloaded financial records dating back to the company's founding. Maya felt a chill run through her. Blackstone didn't wait for us to respond to his threats. No, he didn't. Kareem's voice had gone dangerously quiet. And if those records become public, everything I've built could collapse overnight. What do we do? For a moment, Kareem looked genuinely uncertain, an expression Maya had never seen on his face before. Then his features hardened into resolve. We fight back. But first I need to move you somewhere safe. If they're willing to attack my company this directly, you could be their next target. I'm not hiding, Kareem, not again. Maya's voice was firm. Whatever happens next, we face it together. The look he gave her contained emotions too complex to name gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to acknowledge. Together, then. He squeezed her hand once. But we need to move quickly. The next 24 hours will determine everything. The next morning broke with news that sent shockwaves through Dubai's business community. The headline in the Financial Times read, Al Fayez Technologies under investigation, SEC probes founder's past. Similar stories appeared in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, each detailing allegations about Kareem's early business practices and connections to Abdul Rahman. The effect was immediate. Al Fayez Technologies stock plummeted 30% within hours of the market opening. Board members began calling emergency meetings. Investors threatened to pull funding. From the temporary command center they'd established in a private wing of the Burj Al Arab, Kareem watched the unfolding chaos with eerie calm. They're more efficient than I expected, he said, scanning the articles on multiple screens. These stories are too coordinated to be coincidental. Maya nodded grimly. Blackstone has press connections, and they've clearly been preparing this attack for some time. David's face appeared on the main video screen, his expression grave. The board is demanding answers, Kareem. 3 major investors have already announced they're reconsidering their positions. Tell them I'll issue a statement within the hour, Kareem replied, his voice steady despite the crisis. And David, initiate Project Phoenix. It's time. The cryptic instruction seemed to surprise David. Are you certain once we start? I'm certain. Execute immediately. As the call ended, Maya turned to Kareem. Project Phoenix. A tight smile crossed his face. Contingency planning. I've never believed in fighting defensively when attacked. He moved to the window, looking out over the city he'd escaped years before. Blackstone thinks he can destroy me by exposing my past. What he doesn't realize is that I've been preparing for this moment since the day I left Abdul's organization. What are you planning? The truth, Maya, but on my terms, not theirs. He turned back to her, decision made. I'm going public with everything: my teenage hacking incident, my work for Abdul, the origins of my company's funding. All of it. That's incredibly risky, Maya said, trying to process the implications. The legal exposure alone is mitigated by the statute of limitations on most issues and by documentation I've maintained proving Abdul's coercion on others. Kareem's expression was determined. Meanwhile, our legal team is filing formal complaints against Blackwell and Stern with regulatory authorities in London, New York, and Dubai, backed by Amira's evidence. Maya studied him with new admiration. Where most people would retreat under such an attack, Kareem was advancing. You never planned to hide, did you? Even before I convinced you to fight. Let's say I was prepared for various scenarios. His smile became more genuine. Though your perspective helped clarify which path was right, not just expedient. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming text. The message was from an unknown number, but the content made her blood run cold. Ms. Nazari, you've chosen the wrong side again. Check your email for a reminder of the consequences. This time, there will be no second chances. With trembling fingers, Maya opened her email to find a message containing a single video file. The thumbnail image showed her London apartment from 2 years ago, the night everything fell apart. Maya, what is it? Kareem moved to her side, concern evident in his voice. They were recording me. She struggled to keep her voice steady. The night I confronted James about the money laundering, they had cameras in my apartment. She pressed play, and the video began with crystal clarity: Maya in her London flat, James entering, their argument escalating. But then the footage showed something she had no memory of: James pouring drinks, her becoming disoriented, documents being placed before her hand signing papers she couldn't recall. They drugged me, she whispered, horror dawning as the implications became clear. This video makes it look like I knowingly signed documents facilitating money laundering. They set me up from the beginning. Kareem's expression darkened with fury as he watched the footage. This is why they were so confident you couldn't fight back. Not just threats, they manufactured evidence against you. Maya felt the room spin slightly as 2 years of confusion finally made sense. If this had been presented to the authorities, you wouldn't just have lost your career. You would have faced criminal charges. Kareem took her hand, steadying her. Maya, look at me. This video doesn't incriminate you, it exonerates you. It shows clear evidence of coercion, drugging, and fraud by James Blackstone. The realization penetrated her shock. They sent this thinking it would frighten me into backing down. Instead, they just gave us the evidence we need to completely clear your name. Kareem's eyes met hers with fierce determination. This changes everything. For a moment, Maya couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the implications. For 2 years, she had lived with the shadow of professional disgrace, never fully understanding how thoroughly she had been betrayed. Now the truth was literally in her hands, painful but also liberating. We need to add this to our regulatory filings immediately, she said finally, professional instincts reasserting themselves. And contact the London Bar Association. Kareem nodded, then hesitated. Maya, before we take the next step, are you absolutely certain? Once we go public with both our stories, there's no returning to anonymity for either of us. Maya thought about the waitress uniform hanging in her New York apartment, the years of hiding, the constant fear of discovery. Then she thought about the woman she had glimpsed in herself these past few days, the advocate, the fighter, the person who refused to let injustice stand unchallenged. I've never been more certain of anything, she said. Let's finish this. 6 hours later, Kareem stood before a forest of microphones in the grand ballroom of the Burj Al Arab cameras, broadcasting his image around the world. Behind him stood Maya Hassan and Amira Sharif and representatives from 2 other businesses that had been targeted by Blackwell and Stern. I come before you today not as the CEO of Al Fayez Technologies, but as a man with a past I have never fully acknowledged publicly. Kareem began, his voice strong and clear. 18 years ago, I hacked into a banking system to save my mother's life. That action led me into a relationship with a powerful businessman who saw potential in my skills, both legitimate and otherwise. The room fell silent as Kareem methodically detailed his early years, neither minimizing his actions nor dramatizing them. He explained the circumstances of his mother's illness, the coercion he faced, and his eventual break from Abdul Rahman's influence. I built Al Fayez Technologies with knowledge gained during those years, but with a vow that my company would operate with transparency and integrity, values I came to appreciate precisely because I had seen their absence. His gaze swept the room, meeting the cameras directly. I have documentation of all transactions from our founding to the present day, which I am making available to appropriate regulatory bodies for full review. Maya watched from behind him, marveling at his composure and the strategic brilliance of his approach. By voluntarily disclosing what Blackstone had thought would destroy him, Kareem had transformed a potential catastrophe into a narrative of redemption. But my story is only part of why we're here today, Kareem continued. We have uncovered evidence of a systematic campaign targeting businesses owned by Middle Eastern entrepreneurs, a campaign orchestrated by the London law firm Blackwell and Stern. He gestured for Maya to join him at the podium. As she stepped forward, she felt none of the fear that had defined her existence for so long. Instead, she felt a profound sense of purpose. My name is Maya Nazari, she began, her voice steady. 2 years ago, I was a senior associate at Blackwell and Stern when I discovered evidence of money laundering operations being facilitated through the firm. When I threatened to report this activity, James Blackstone and his father Alexander orchestrated my professional destruction. She outlined the evidence they had gathered, Amira's documentation, the pattern of sabotage against multiple businesses, and finally the video revealing how James had drugged and manipulated her. This wasn't just about silencing one whistleblower, Maya explained. It was part of a larger operation targeting businesses with Middle Eastern ownership or connections, creating artificial legal problems, then forcing distressed sales to their investment partners. As she finished speaking, Hassan Sharif and the other business owners each shared their experiences, creating a damning picture of systematic discrimination and fraud spanning multiple years and countries. The press conference ended with Kareem's announcement that Al Fayez Technologies was establishing a legal defense fund for businesses affected by similar practices, with Maya appointed as its director. We stand here today not just to defend ourselves, but to ensure that justice extends to all entrepreneurs, regardless of their heritage or connections, Kareem concluded. Thank you. As they left the podium amid a barrage of questions from the press, Maya felt Kareem's hand find hers, squeezing once in silent support. Whatever came next, regulatory investigations, potential legal challenges, the uncertain future of their professional relationship, they would face it together. For the first time since she had fled London in disgrace, Maya felt not just hope, but triumph. The truth finally spoken aloud had set her free. 3 months later, Maya stood at the window of her new corner office in the Al Fayez Technologies building in Manhattan, watching autumn leaves swirl across Central Park. Behind her, the door opened quietly as Kareem entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "The London Bar Association called," he said, placing 1 cup on her desk. "Your license has been officially reinstated with a formal apology for their failure to properly investigate the circumstances of your departure from Blackwell and Stern." Maya accepted the coffee with a smile that still held traces of disbelief at how completely her life had transformed. In Blackstone, James was arrested in London this morning. The Serious Fraud Office has charged him with 27 counts, ranging from evidence tampering to money laundering. Kareem's satisfaction was evident. Alexander is cooperating with authorities, apparently trying to save himself at his son's expense. Charming family, and Sharif Communications. The acquisition is proceeding smoothly now that all the artificial regulatory issues have been cleared. Kareem moved beside her at the window. Hassan has agreed to stay on as regional director. He has quite a talent for telecommunications innovation when not being systematically sabotaged. Maya nodded, taking in the autumn skyline. So much had changed since that night at Lumiere when she had recognized a fraudulent contract and spoken up instead of remaining invisible. The legal defense initiative she now headed was already representing 4 other businesses targeted by similar schemes. Her professional reputation had been not just restored, but enhanced by her role in exposing the Blackstone conspiracy. "Any word from Abdul?" she asked quietly. "Surprisingly, yes." Kareem's expression was thoughtful. "He sent a message through intermediaries. Apparently, my public acknowledgement of our past association earned his respect, though he was disappointed by my characterization of some details." "Is that a problem?" "No, Abdul respects power and decisive action above all else. By going public on my terms instead of being exposed on Blackstone's, I demonstrated both." A slight smile touched his lips. "Besides, the statute of limitations has expired on most of our collaborative endeavors." Maya studied his profile against the Manhattan skyline. The past 3 months had been intense: regulatory investigations, press scrutiny, restructuring of his company's leadership after 2 board members resigned in the initial fallout. Through it all, Kareem had maintained the same determined focus she had first glimpsed that night at the restaurant. But she had also seen other sides of him: his loyalty to employees who stood by him, his genuine desire to transform his company's ethical foundation, his unwavering support of her own professional resurrection. "What happens now?" she asked. Kareem turned to face her fully, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "That depends. On what? On whether your interest in justice extends to personal relationships as well as professional ones." His voice softened. "On whether a reformed teenage hacker with a complicated past might have a chance with a brilliant lawyer who changed his understanding of integrity." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest at the vulnerability in his question. After years of professional masks and careful distance, the honesty between them felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I think, she said carefully, that people who have seen both darkness and light understand the value of truth more than those who have only known one or the other. She set down her coffee cup and moved closer to him. I think that second chances are rare and worth embracing when they appear. Kareem's smile transformed his entire face, erasing the last traces of the guarded businessman and revealing the man beneath. Is that a yes, counselor? It's a beginning, Maya replied, reaching for his hand. One where neither of us has to be invisible or perfect, just real. As his fingers interlaced with hers, Maya thought about the long journey that had brought them to this moment, from a chance encounter in a Manhattan restaurant to an international legal battle, from professional respect to something deeper and more profound. Whatever challenges awaited them, and there would surely be many, they would face them not as the billionaire and the lawyer, but simply as Kareem and Maya, two people who had discovered that the greatest risk in life was not in fighting for justice, but in failing to recognize when justice and love became the same pursuit. A beginning, Kareem agreed, drawing her closer. I can think of nothing I want more. And in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of their shared victory and the promise of a future neither could have imagined, months before, Maya knew with absolute certainty that she had finally found her way home.